This week's episode has been sponsored by Oh My Bod, shifting the evolution of pleasure. Hi, this is Suzanne, and you're listening to Sex Advice for Seniors. And as we're in the holiday season, I'm feeling very seasonal. I've just come back from having an early Christmas dinner with my colleague. And I've had one glass of wine and a very nice cocktail. So this is going to be it's going to be a nice kind of loose, free-flowing conversation. Might get a bit naughty. Who knows? My guest I just feel she's a woman after my own heart. Her name is Dr. Nikki Monti. She's a psychotherapist and thought healer. Those of you in the States might have seen her on Keeping Up with the Kardashians on Bravo. She's been on loads of television shows. She's written a very engaging book that I've just been listening to her talk about on other podcasts called The Divine Traumedy of Nicki Joy. I love that. And her website has got an even better name, which is Stuck No More. I love that. Welcome, Nikki, to Sex Advice.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to speak to the naughtiness of it all, this continuing title of the book is Divine Traumedy of Nicki Joy, a True Grime Tale. So we're right in the Suzanne category here.
Love that. I love that. My books, I wrote a couple of memoirs back in my fees that were just me having sex with lots of people. It was, and they were very popular. And subsequent to that, it doesn't matter whether you're in your 40s or your 60s. If you write about your own sex life, people will pay you to read that.
Yes.
It's incredible.
That's right. Yes.
Anyway,
yes, there's a lot. I was having a conversation with a client yesterday, and he was explaining men to me, which was fascinating.
I'm good.
he's got a high sexual vibration. Let's say he thinks of himself as highly sexual and does these sort of semi-interesting things. He was explaining to me that men just can't be aggressive just can't be aggressive with women in the way that women with women can be aggressive. And I said, yeah, not so much. You would be incorrect about that. No, I mean, that's the way it is. I said, read my book. Get back to me on that.
Yeah, I mean,
explaining sex to me with someone who, kind of been there.
Yeah, only like a few decades of experience with this.
Jeez,
I love when mansplains stuff like that, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I had a roommate once. Well, he was like a flatmate, and he tried to explain how women like sex to me and another woman in a car once on our way to a Halloween party. I'll never forget, because she's got a business called The Pleasure Project, which is all about eroticizing safe sex. It's an NGO. It's been running for over 2 decades. She's like the world leading authority on sexual pleasure and all sorts of things. And I obviously do this. And he was trying to explain to us, how women experience sexual pleasure. She just kept looking at me in the car like, is this guy serious? What is he talking of? Why is he talking about this with us? But anyway, yeah, by the by. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're a woman with lots of experience from what I can tell. And we were talking just before we started recording about the fact that you've been married 3 times. And now you're in a very happy relationship. And I'm curious about that whole journey that you've went on, from marriage 1 to not.
To marry, yeah. Well, yeah, my first 2 marriages I was under 29 when that,
wow.
came and went. So, that was, and then and people said, why do you keep getting married? And I said, because they keep asking me. I don't know. No was not in my vocabulary. And, those 2 marriages were brief, one with my college boyfriend. And the second, and I think of him as my drug marriage. And then my second marriage was my alcoholism marriage. So I'm a recovered person. I've been recovered for many, many years. But that was a drunken debacle, brief. And what I discovered about that was it was very violent, and it was sort of I think of it as Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf in the living day by day version, and very much so. And in that marriage, there was a lot of dramatic, very brutal sex and violence and all of these things. And it was going so well for the first, month or two that we decided to get married. And it was, again, very brief, but very violent. And the point you ask about what did you learn, because that is the thing about relationships or anything in life. If we don't learn anything from them, then, it's same old, same old. We will stay in the old pattern. What I learned in that marriage was, and what I say about that is, that man beat me in all the places I hadn't learned yet to beat myself. And so, the idea was that we make choices, and I have no victim mentality or even patience for the victim mentality at all. There are victimizers, but there are no victims. We sign up what we sign up for, unless you're a child and Epstein, right? So besides that, but as adults, we really make all of our choices. And the only freedom we have is to take responsibility for those choices. What I learned in terms of sexuality in those, by the time I met my third husband, which was 33 and a half, that was a 33 and a half year marriage that ended with 18 months of his illness. And so he was older than I was. And we had a lot of interesting and potent sex. He was also a compulsive, and so we compulsed together. We were sober, and what happened was that somewhere along the line, I'm not ruining the book because hearing it from me in the book, I also read it, but whether you read it or you listen to me read it, he had a prostatectomy and he decided that he was done with sex. And he decided that I was done with sex. And then he decided, as he said one day, that, well, you never were very sexual anyway, which was hysterically funny and just, convenient for him to think, and just absolutely not true. And so I did, I tried all sorts of ways to convince him sex is not just about putting the member in the member. Yeah. And that there's a lot of other things, and we had done those other things. So why now are you? Well, he just had no desire. And I think he was embarrassed. He felt impotent, which he was in some ways, but he felt powerless as he was aging and all of these things. So I did all the things that we try to do to take care of ourselves. And that involved a lot of different kinds of things, but none of them were satisfying because desire is my fire.
Yeah.
And so, hiring somebody or the different things that we can do, it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't work. It works for some people, and they should do that then. I write about this in the book that after Conrad died, and again, it was that 18 months was brilliant for me because I learned so much about myself and being in service to love in a whole new way. And it was really good. And I had really kept one foot at the door that whole relationship because I was really not taught anything about love. And I tried to teach other people, we teach what we need to learn, right? No, after about, I had done a lot of work as he was dying with myself, and I have all my life. I've been a seeker, I have all sorts of I tried everything I'm sure there is to try, and did a lot of healing along the way, and, really beautiful. That drop into pure vulnerability really didn't happen until I was in service to his dying. And he was a very hugely vivacious life force, so it was interesting and heartbreaking, of course, to watch him be so diminished. That being said, he died, and I was writing during his 6 months of him dying and keeping track of what was going on. Somebody had suggested that I keep an online journal, he said, because you'll need it later. I had no idea what that meant, but I've always been a writer. I've had books. So I started writing this book, and it was really defensive. I mean, I needed to work through the material, all that stuff. And it took many shapes. And finally this year it was published in this fall, a couple months ago. So 10 months or so after Conrad died, I said, it's time to date again. And I thought some people are going to think this is too soon. Other people might think, what? How old are you? Whatever. Like as if libidinous life flow suddenly should stop at a certain age, which is nonsense. And talk about advice, sex advice to seniors. Sex advice to seniors is the same for me as sex advice to everybody. It's get the hell in your body and stop running from yourself. Feel the vivacious, extraordinary light that lives in your body. Be juicy from top to bottom, in and out, and all the time. Obviously not all of the time because we have to rest. But, address that. So I met this man. I dated a few people. They're pretty not interesting, but dating had not changed at all. And I did a lot of dating. Dating had not changed at all. Everybody was insecure to some degree, a little more secure because they were at a different point of their life. And everybody wanted to get laid. This was across the board. It was exactly the same.
No, nothing has changed. I don't think women realize that everybody wants to get laid because sometimes they don't, right? And
and I find that women are women who have always been enthusiastic, remain enthusiastic, generally speaking. Yes, we have to deal with menopause and all those things. It doesn't, it's, absolutely, Suzanne, the most important organ we have is our brain.
Yeah, 100%.
And we can turn ourselves off and we can turn ourselves on.
Yeah.
And, and then if we have somebody there who's also very sensual, and I find sensuality the most important part of sexuality. And, so that we're in this weaving together, it's energetic, if I can be, very fairy about it, but it is true and energetic. It's the thing people take drugs for, Molly and whatever everybody's doing now. They do all that to get that. You can get that without substances. You can get that through your intention and, the way you're thinking about it and how you're approaching it. So I meet this man and he is splendid. He's not at all my type. I'm not at all his type. I'm way out of his box from a place in California called Orange County, which I always think of as just a little too white. Anyway, so it's, I'm from New York originally, and once a New Yorker, always a New Yorker. Even though I've been in California since 79, I still talk about.
Well, here I am. I've been in London since 74, right? And I'm originally from New York, and I went back.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's something about New York. Well, also, it's just a thing, isn't it? It's just a
thing. Yeah. So, okay, I'm flying over tomorrow to see you. I want to see you in London. Okay. All right, next. So I meet this guy and right away we have this amazing conversation on the phone. He has never done therapy, which was crazy to me, but he was a divorce attorney, and then he was a mediation attorney for divorcing people.
So
we had a similar language. His wife had died 6 months before my husband had died. He'd had a 40-year marriage. He was very family oriented. I have zero family. He's got like 1,000 people in his family, Catholics. And so they just breed. And but so smart and witty and playful and very sensual. And to use a silly reference, but some people might appreciate it. It's a triple Scorpio. I mean, it doesn't get better. Yeah. So, and he's just so sensual and so sexual. And I talk about this in the book, so it's okay for me to talk about it here. He tells me as we're talking, first of all, the first hour, he says to me, listen, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's going to happen if this is a one and done, we're going to keep going, whatever, but we had so much of a pull. And he said, I'd like us to make a promise to each other, though. And I said, what's that? And he said, no pretense, no pretending we're people who we're not, no putting on false face, none of that, no matter what. I said, I am in. This is extraordinary. I mean, it's what I teach. And here I'm fantastic. And then the next thing he says in that opening sequence together. He said, I want to be value added to your life every day. I'm like, okay, I just don't even know what this means. You're amazing. And he was so great. And then he says, before we're about to get more intimate, that we were already very connected, which is what real intimacy is. He said, I want to tell you that I've had a prostatectomy. And I'm like, okay, this could be a deal breaker. I don't know. He feels really different,
Yeah.
And I want to tell you, Suzanne, it is my clients already know this, but the broad public does not yet, unless they've read the whole book.
Yeah.
Best sex of my life. His daughters, clearly younger than him, right? His daughters go, yes, we know, Dad. You're having more sex than anyone in the family, all the people put together. I know. Because there's a freedom that we have. We don't have all the concerns, I have to do this to get this to happen, and the family has to have that. We just have this love, this intensity of connection. And when we have these moments, of course, and we practice something called emotional honesty, which is like, I felt really forgotten, I felt scared, I felt whatever. And so the arguments or the tiffs or whatever over immediately, because he says that and I say, I don't go, well, because you were, and then I say, wow, I'm really sorry you feel that way. I could see why you would feel that way because it's my truth. And he does the same. So the arguments, and that leaves room for love. And it leaves room for zestiness. And, we're very affectionate, we're just affectionate and open and adventuresome and, all those things. And it is what makes it the best is that I have finally vulnerably surrendered to love. And I always used to think love, and I thought, I don't feel love the way other people. I feel it for my clients in a moment of brilliance, where they're making some discovery that is just opening my heart. My eyes are welling up, and I do some very intense and difficult work with people's original wounds and all of that. But for myself, I was all up in here, and that's not where. That can send you diving into good sex, but it can't keep you in this abundant experience of passionate, loving, raw, intense, nice, not nice, nasty, whatever, all the things. It can't keep you there, right?
No.
It has to be hard.
I ask you, because you said that he lives in Orange County. Do you still live apart?
No. Oh, no. He lived immediately. He came here every day. After the first day, we've never been apart. He came here every day. 3 years ago, he sold his house, or 3.5 years ago, almost immediately, he sold his house in Orange County, and he moved in here because I do my, I have a sacred space that I do my workshops in and things like that. He's also joined my work. So I was doing this kind of upper level workshop with people I had done a lot of work with. And I said, hey, do you want to come in? Because he'd never seen anything. I said, well, what would I do? I said, well, it's a pretty sophisticated group. I said, you'll just hold the masculine. And he said, yeah, I have no idea what that means. I'm going to have my hand on my groin. I'm not sure what you're saying.
I like this guy because I'm so not woo-woo. And if anyone says shit like that to me, I'm like, I don't know what the hell you just...
It's like I have no idea. So he calls my best friend, who is a sensuality coach, by the way. She gets people into their sexual body in just beautiful way. She's been my best friend for a long time. Before she was a sensuality coach, but now she'd already met him and loved him and all the things. And so he calls her because she's on all the workshops like a co-person. Yeah. And she said, Nikki's invited me to come into the workshop. He said, great. She said, great. Oh, that'll be great. And she said I would hold the masculine. What does that mean? And she says, you'll be fine, and hangs up. It's the same thing I said. So he starts Googling,
masculine.
you'll be Carl Jung, because I'm very Jungian, right? So he starts Googling Jung and reading all the things about Jung, and he's a researcher and everything. Anyway, he carries this masculine and the feminine as well in terms of he's emotional when it's right dead on the money to be emotional. It's not like he's crying every day, but he has this deep relationship with his feeling center. He's loving. He's the good father for everybody who meets him.
Yeah.
A lot of people I work with didn't have that. I certainly didn't have that. So, and we're partners. And I never had, I always ran everything. And he's a real partner. So it has been unpredictable and unpredicted this time of my life and this final chapter of my life. And, we say we have much more behind us than in front of us. We're on a short runway and we live life with that in mind, in a good,
Yeah, God, I have so much to unpick of this conversation. I don't even know where to start. What I think is so interesting about so much of what you said and is so heartwarming to hear is especially in light of the fact that you're the man with whom you were married for decades and had a similar, experience to your current partner having had a prostatectomy, and yet their attitude towards that could not have been more different. And I hear that so often from men who have experienced that procedure and then the loss of being able to have an erection completely decimates their libido, their sex life, and they seem to just accept that in a way that is not beneficial for them or for their relationship or for anybody, frankly. But it seems a really common experience. So
yeah.
Talked
and
about.
They can have erections. You just have to, you have to take the little pills.
Yeah, of course.
It's not like it was, and it's shorter than it was. I mean, the actual penis is shorter than it was because they take whatever. But so
the point is that I spoke to a man months ago called Bob Mizek, who's got a Substack newsletter about having that experience himself and then making a really intentional decision that this was not going to prevent him from being intimate with his wife. And he was going to seek out as much help and as much information and as much as he could to be able to continue to have a sexual and intimate relationship with his wife. And that journey that he went on, and it was a journey because he found a lot of bad advice from healthcare professionals and all sorts of people that just said, hey, it's over. Don't, live with it. But he wasn't willing to accept that.
Find all of them and put them in some special little dark room where they must live for this
there's
year.
a lot of them. Sadly, there's a lot of those people out there. And his and Bob's experience was that actually, and it sounds similar to your current partner, is that what it led him to discover is a different type of intimacy that was deeper, that was more creative, that was more kind of all in, like just the way that we can experience sexual pleasure in all its forms. And when you meet somebody who's gone on that, God, it's so much more invigorating, isn't it?
So much more invigorating.
And it's also so sexy when somebody sort of says, so fucking what? My dick doesn't go up and down the way it used to. Like, okay, I'll try something else. I'll do something else. And I think, there's not enough said about that. So to hear those two experiences that you had, that one so different than the other, I think is such a great indication that, you don't have to put up with bad advice, nor do you have to, nor do you have to put up with, what goes on,
And nor do you have to have, so you fighting with contempt prior to investigation, we call it, right? So I could have made the assumption that, okay, well, there's a deal breaker.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I would have missed out on this, but I had already been hanging out with him for enough hours and felt into his energy. And I read people pretty well after all these years of doing this. And I was going to be a sex therapist when I first started being a therapist because, hey, teach what you know. So I was going to be a sex therapist, but I found it boring because sex is the repository for all the other feelings. Sex and money are the two things that people fight about, right? Because it's quantifiable. We had sex once this month. We have $112 in the bank, right? It can be. I can't say you gave me 33% of your respect this month. It's just not quantifiable. So it becomes the basket that
Yeah.
all the other crap falls into.
Yeah, good point.
And so it becomes the resentment basket. You don't respect me basket, and all the other things. And it's not fair. It's putting too much on it.
Yeah. And the other thing that you said, which really I took to heart, and I think so many people struggle with, was at the very beginning when you met this guy, he didn't fall into your type. Right?
Right.
You said he was from this place that you didn't regard very highly.
Right.
He didn't look like your type. He didn't do this. He didn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't, I've always been attracted to ethnic looking people. He's, super, he's Irish, of Irish descent. You know what I'm saying? And he wore button down shirts and, just,
Yeah. So he was, but I think, again, especially, later on in life, for so many of us, we have a history of just going after type. My type is generally the bad boy, and I'm still with one. Don't change.
How's it going?
He's bad and he's good.
Yeah.
But, he is what he is.
Yeah.
It's just, so many of us just fall into these predictable patterns, and then we go, why isn't it working? Like, what's not working? And it's like, well, because it never worked before, right? And so you took that leap of faith, which I admire so much, because it's fucking tough sometimes to shift out of our little prescribed,
little
box.
Yeah.
Ticking that we all do, right? And I think that also was just so encouraging that you went, fuck it. You know what? The guy lives in Orange County, doesn't fit my type, but there's something going on here. It's interesting. I'm going to see where this goes. And I think that was also incredible.
Well, I think it's important. And in general, women are more flexible in those ways than men, generally. She has to have big tits, whatever it is. But we will tend to give certain things a shot. I mean, I have my limits. But I went for something that was totally different. So again, desire's my fire. So my husband loved me, I'm pretty much sure, more than anybody has ever loved anybody in the universe. But that didn't make him a great partner. We were so different, sort of politically and psychologically. He was all interested in the exterior landscape. He was a historian. He would read 2-3 novels a week, which he had time to do because he didn't have a job, and he would do all these things. I'm interested in the inner landscape, and the outer landscape's okay. It's fine. But the inner landscape is what really floats my boat. But the love he was offering me was a healing property for me. And I knew what I was doing. I chose that over other things because I had felt I'd been so basically, as they say, an interruption in my mother's life. It's like, oh yeah, you're supposed to have children. I got one now on with my actual life. So, and she was, she was an entrepreneur. Listen, I learned a lot from my mother, but she was also a malignant narcissist. And I don't label people much, but my mother was that. She was a very dangerous and dark person in the way that she operated in her life. And of course, the great thing about that is I went the other way. I did dark things to myself, like marry men who beat me, but just tiny little things, and made terrible, terrible choices. But I didn't do it to other people,
Yeah.
So the idea of allowing myself to really, I used to work with an astrologer who used to say, it's not falling into love, it's rising into love. And I love that term. And I didn't let myself rise into love. It just felt too damn dangerous, And so we get what we expect in life, as it turns out. We get what we expect. If we expect to be abandoned, we're going to find people to abandon us. If we expect to be mistreated, it's easy. They're, all over the place.
Yeah,
If we accept that if we deserve love and we deserve kindness and we deserve generosity, then that's what we will get.
yeah.
And it's not so simple as, okay, I deserve it. And there, see, it comes. We have to deeply believe it in our bodies. And I always say, I bet you would agree with this, Suzanne. I always say, until I know something in my body, I don't really know it. I have a lot of smart thoughts, but until I feel it in my body, I don't know it for sure. I just don't.
Yeah.
And,
I think also, people are generally very dissociated from their bodies.
so dissociated.
So when you say that, it sounds kind of like easy, but it's not actually easy because it means you actually have to listen to all the parts of your body, not just your brain maybe going,
No.
red flag, but something deep in your body that's maybe cramping or uncomfortable or something just doesn't feel right or, and that for lots of people who are so disassociated from their body, that's not an easy thing to do. So, that's
yes, it's a wonderful defense is a dissociation defense, which happens for a lot of people. I'm from an alcoholic family, for instance, the battle law. That's a savior for us. Defenses aren't bad. Everyone has defenses and they're not bad. They're just good if we're in charge of them rather than they being in charge of us. But dissociation, I renamed as emotional blackouts because when I'm dissociated, I don't remember those parts of my life. So big chunks of my life have fallen into the ocean,
Yeah, that's my merit.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we don't want to be there. There's a part of us that isn't going to be there, but we can't take the body out for some reason, whatever our choice is around that. And then the other thing that I think a lot of us have, we know about body dysmorphia, right? I look at my body, I think I'm fat as a horse or cow or whoever is fat. And that's one kind. But I also think we have emotional dysmorphia. We look at ourselves. I certainly thought I was a disgusting, unlovable, ugly piece of crap for a lot of my life. And I was going to, but one thing I knew how to do is have sex. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's, you know what I mean? It's not that hard. Women will come into me and they go, oh, someone, I had sex with someone. He really wanted me. I'm like, baby, I don't mean to give it. I don't want to rain on your parade, but men aren't that difficult when it comes to wanting
sorry. I mean, you had a pussy, honey. That's it.
I mean, there are people who are more selective and they have self-esteem,
Yes.
But chances are that guy you picked up in the bar on the corner is not got the self-esteem you're looking for or that you should have.
Yeah.
So we become more selective, I think, about everything.
And the other thing that you said that was great, and I think it, again, we talk about tick boxes when we're looking for a partner. Often the things that I hear people talk about for me are quite superficial things, like they must be tall or, or they must work in finance or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I heard you say was husband was focused on the external world. He was curious and interested in the stuff that was outside of him. And your current partner is really interested in the internal world. And I thought, what an interesting and much more, just a much more, interesting way to describe the kind of person that you're attracted to, which is
kind. He's the kindest, most generous, like really generous, not just generous where he'll get credit for it, but generous and stable but also fun. But we went traveling the first year we were together. We went, or maybe it was the second year. Anyway, we went to this, we had a wedding to perform in Tuscany. So we made a whole trip of it and did a whole bunch of other things. But we were going to go to one place and he said, and he had this dream all his life. this repetitive dream that he knew and other experiences was about Auschwitz and much more about Judaism than I was, right? Knew much more. It was the same thing with Conrad. That was another thing about that was interesting. But anyway, we went to Auschwitz together, and it was so beautiful to do that with him and moving because his compassion. So I'll give you another example of who this man is, just because I feel like talking about it. It's the holidays. My Conrad was a warrior. He had been in 3 wars. It turned out in the long run to be a spy as well, which was kind of fun. But I knew the whole time, but he would never admit it. But I found his papers in the last month of his life. But anyway, he had all these guns. I walked in one day, the library that I created for him, and there was a Lazy Susan of rifles. I was like, I started hyperventilating, I said, I'm not a gun person. And he said, isn't it cool? No, not cool. Not cool. Well, most of them don't work. I said, some of them do? What is it? Anyway, so I had all these rifles when he died. I had all these things. And so Tom who is a minimalist, he comes into this house of a hoarder, and he opens the thing, and there's all these rifles here, and his first thing was, wow, imagine how much blood these rifles have shed. Who are you? Who are you? And it wasn't airy-fairy, and it wasn't icky-wicky. It was just it was a true heartful reference for him.
Yeah.
And that is the thing where I've fallen so deeply in love with his inner landscape. And we'll lie in bed like college students and talk about the universe and what is soul and what is love and what happens. Is there anything? Maybe there is. We don't know, because we've both been seekers all our life in very different ways.
Yeah.
But
and he doesn't sound woo-woo either.
He's not. He's not.
And I've
gotten him to do a few things because I do shadow work, which is a Jungian process.
Oh, yeah. I know about that.
Yeah, and I teach shadow work, and I do it. And I find it to be, I just think it is a pivotal healing point when you can do shadow work. So anyway,
Nikki, you know what? We have gone way beyond the time that I normally allocate for this kind of thing. But only because, babe, it's the holidays. I've had a couple of drinks, and I'm like, she's so fun. Let her just carry on. I don't really need to say very much.
I know we're like girlfriends. You can cut it up into 2 pieces, or you can, we can do a series.
No, I think you misunderstand what this is all about. That's far too difficult for me.
I know. I would be for me too.
Take this wonderful piece conversation in its entirety, and we just top and tail it with my wonderful sponsors and stuff, and then everyone loves it, and it becomes a big hit, and you get more people out of it, and hopefully I get a few more listeners. It's all good. Anyway, It has been so awesome to talk to you. We have to have I have to put you down as must organize another conversation, because I did have 10 questions on a piece of paper and I haven't asked a single one of them.
I know, I'm very chatty.
No, that's okay.
They can't ring me in. It's terrible. We did talk a lot about sex.
We did, which is the point. And also we talked about some of the stuff that I think is important to talk about, which is, that desire never retires, as I like to say. Desire never retires.
I love that.
Yeah. And that, we can overcome some of the health challenges that we often face at this time of life. It's all to do with our mindset.
It is all to do with our mindset.
And so I think that's a great place to end.
I love it. What a joy. Thank you so much across the pond.
I'll come and visit you one day.
Or me, you. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.